That was a feature on the application of technology in food security. And before we went for that feature, I told you when you come back, you'll meet my guest. And right here, I have a guest with me. He is Professor Victor Patrick Akpan. He is a toxicologist and food security expert. And together, we're talking about technology in food security. Professor, you're welcome to Good Morning Abuja.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So, sir, we're looking at, we just came from a feature and it talked about the application of technology in food security. So, we want to ask you to discuss some key ways in which technology is being used to improve food security globally now.
To address that question, a very broad question indeed, and it's timely. Because you remember that recently the president proclaimed an emergency for food security, and it's even at the African Union level, there is also an emergency. Then the FAO is addressing the UNESCO. Everybody knows that food security is now an emergency. What is food security? Simply put, families, members of households must be able to access food, affordable, available, and sufficient, nutritious enough to make the children and adults grow and achieve full potential, intellectually and physically. All those concepts are embodied in the new definition of food security. Now, there is national food security, which means that we Nigerians, we should be bracing up to feed ourselves without needing to import, and making sure that we have reserve for emergency. Now, how do we harness technology? It is even, we are lucky that there is technology. Because we can bypass the problems. For instance, is it water? Nigeria has abundant water. Now we are in the process of bracing up for flooding. Because we have not adhered to the policies that we ourselves had drawn up, which was to capture the water from most of our rivers and reuse them for irrigation. Now technologically, we have an institution like NIMET. It warns you, they advise you, but we have not listened. And now the problem is compounded that we are even unable to harness the water that we have, yet we go without water. Now, technology has come and has said that, well, you can deploy drip irrigation, even in arid areas. And you have sensors now that are embedded and inserted into drones. Then they are able to monitor the water level under in the soil, and then give you a feedback so that when you grow, you don't inundate the area, but you only apply the right quantity of water. And now, if you go from there technologically, you can also control pests by adding some, people don't like pesticides anymore. But you can use what we call, in Italian we call it lotta biologica, biological control. In fact, that is one of the topics that I wanted to address today.
But what does that do? You don't need to.
Biological control, entomologists, people who study insects know very well. I'm not an expert in that, but I have studied pheromones. What are pheromones? Some insects communicate through those chemicals, and they aggregate So there are studies now, right from the 80s, early 80s. These pheromones have now been synthesized, and you can actually use it. Okay, you have pests all over this room, insects, infesting insects. Okay. You spray, and they smell, and then all crawl to that area.
Okay, so how is data analytics helping in the monitoring and prediction of food production and consumption patterns?
When we have the bulk of data, for instance, you have extension officers in the field. They collect the data. They see the crops, and they monitor what the farmers are doing. Then right from there, if you have a solid field hands, they will feed you. When you bring your data to the office, you will then be able to have those indicators that you have built into your analytical tools. Now, it is important to find out whether we have experts that collect those data. Because if you say you want to intervene later in providing, like this intervention that the president said, okay, we are going to have 200, 400, 500,000 bags of rice. Okay. Now, from the farm to the paddy collection, then to the milling area. That is where you want to monitor the positioning. For instance, recently, I went to a very big farm, I won't mention the name, but a really big farm in Nassau State. It is state-of-the-art farm. And I went to see their rice milling process. Very, very efficient. They have their power units, and they generate their power from the remains of the husk with a very efficient burner. Now, why am I mentioning that? If you want to rely on power, public power, to run that mill, you will not have a good product. And the paddy in the farm will spoil. The ones in the trucks will be waiting. So the whole process needs that data analysis. And then it is from the field. You will even predict, are you going to have bumper harvest? And how have you prepared logistically to move them? That is why, for instance, when you cook, you are a woman and you're in the kitchen, when you finish cook your rice, you can feel the odor of rice that has been milled but had overstayed. Because what we call the organoleptic properties, the odor will be a little bit offensive because of the oxidation of most of the proteins, and even the value the good value of that rice will suffer, and you won't get the nutrients that you want. At times, you even have pests in them. Not only pests, but also contaminants. Some of them.
The result of them overstaying, right?
Yes. The same thing happens for groundnuts and peanuts and other nuts. The nuts are really very, very sensitive to humidity.
They have preservatives.
Well, that's when you have families who consume and then they are no more because of eggs. And then the timing for application of pests is very, very important. These are all regulated. And now, when you're talking about this chain, then if your product is for export, then you see that they return from the country where you're sending them because they've found remains or contaminants or pesticides that are beyond the acceptable value.
You've said so much. Like we should just go on and on. Like you have so much to offer, but we'll bring you here some other time because it's a topic we can actually.
And then Professor Mwalo that is coming will
add lots more. Yes. So we've really done a lot. We've learned so much from you today. Thank you for coming on the program and for all you've taught us today. So we've been talking to Professor Patrick Asan. He is a toxicologist and food security expert, and together we've been talking about the application of technology in food security. He told us so much, and we have so much to actually learn and do to make actually the nation in terms of agriculture aspect to be a good one. We'll go on a break, and after that the program continues.